I thought there were multiple winners in the opening of the NFL draft last night, but the Eagles, in my opinion, were the biggest winners early. And we have a lot more draft to go. All right. They continued to use what I call the Georgia-Alabama line theory, and it's genius. It's creating a team out of both of the college juggernauts in Athens and Tuscaloosa. Hell, even before last night, the Eagles already had Jalen Hurts from Bama, Devontae Smith from Bama, Jordan Davis from Georgia, Nakobe Dean from Georgia, Landon Dickerson from Bama, and Josh Jobe from Bama. And now, after yesterday, they added Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter from Georgia. I mean, on defense, they're basically recreating the national championship defense from the Bulldogs. And when you really think about it, this line of thinking has to be the most efficient draft strategy ever. Think about it. If you wanted to create the best, ice cream makers, why would you not just draft the top guys at Ben & Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs? It only makes sense. And teams live to find diamonds in the rough. And that's cool. But creating a pipeline from Nick Saban and Kirby Smart is so simple, yet brilliant. At this rate, the Eagles look to be more stable than a place you keep horses. They have not only implemented a theory that is basically self-explanatory and self-efficient, but it's obviously working. And it's obvious that the Mega Ranger in Philadelphia keeps adding more weapons. David Cone, you got Jalen Carter at 12?
Dude.
And then Nolan Smith at 30.
I mean, look.
I haven't seen robbery this good since Dillinger was on the loose.
I thought they were going to take Nolan Smith at 10. You had the same thing, right?
Yes.
I thought they could take Nolan Smith at 10. He was that type of talent. You go get Jalen Carter instead, and Nolan Smith falls to you at 30. I was texting my buddy who coaches for Washington, and I was like, I cannot believe what the Eagles are putting together right now. It's insane. It's insane.
But the way, again, I want to give the Eagles all the credit. And I think this is one of those situations, and we've talked about this with the NFL draft, where guys overthink things, right? They want to be the guy that gets the player out of nowhere that ends up being a star, right? That's like the dream. You go get a kid from, South Dakota State that ends up being an all-pro for 8 years, and you got him in the late rounds. But what is more simple than just saying, you know what? The two most dominant teams in college football are Georgia and Alabama. Why would we not just build a team out of that? It's so obvious and simple. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that nobody else drafts people from Georgia and Alabama, but not at the clip the Eagles are. I mean, this is a concerted effort, right? At this point.
Yeah, 4 Georgia players last two years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concerted effort.
But even apart from what teams they came from, right? Like these guys, they're evaluating everybody. They see the skill set. I don't care where Nolan Smith went to school. He's fallen to you at 30. We've seen how great he is. It's the Eagles are building this thing from the inside out. This is why I was criticizing the Falcons pick at Bijan Robinson. I thought the Eagles were the type of team who could get away with a pick like that if they wanted to take running back at 10. Instead, what do? They bolster the front 7 still. Talking about winners and losers just in the first round here, we're going to do a complete, winners and losers next week after all of the rounds are done. The Seahawks, once again. I thought the Seahawks are really starting to put together another incredible draft. They go get the number 1 corner you were talking about.
With Tariq Woolen,
the kid from Illinois.
UTSA, who balled out last year.
And then a wide receiver doesn't come off the board until the Seahawks take Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20. We thought this kid might go top 10, maybe top 12. They get him at 20. Seahawks putting together another incredible draft here. I'm not sure what the Lions were doing with Jameer.
Worst team in the first round.
Shocked.
Worst team in the first round.
Shocked.
The Jahmyr Gibbs pick, I don't get, especially early with the defensive people that were on the board. The kid from Iowa, he's a good player. I still think it's a reach pick, but still the defensive talent that was on the board. If you're the Lions, I'm kind of disappointed. Dan Campbell, usually they draft pretty well, especially from the last couple of years. The team I was excited about was the Houston Texans. All right, you walk away with this draft with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. I mean, those are 2 legit guys who I think are going to have a long, fruitful careers in the NFL. You made moves when you needed to make moves, and I don't feel like you gave up a whole hell of a lot for that 3rd pick either to go get Will Anderson Jr. So if you're a Texans fan, I mean, things are starting to look up. I thought the Los Angeles Chargers getting Quentin Johnson to add to that absolutely balling receiving core,
Yeah.
especially with Keenan Allen.
Gah.
With maybe his contract's a little iffy for a certain amount of money, especially.
Look at Mike
a guy who's
Williams.
barely
I
on.
mean-
Mike Williams. You got 2 other ones. Now it's going to get interesting with Austin Eckler. Because at the end of the day, who do you have to keep remaining on your team?
Have to sign.
That's Justin Herbert.
Oh,
Right, so you got to clear space. So the Austin Eckler, I mean, the Baltimore Ravens getting Zay Flowers
That was my
is
that
going
was
to
my
be huge for
sneaky winner
them. Well,
last
I mean,
night.
what's still out there right now, you got to think DeAndre Hopkins is still floating out there right now. So we'll see what really happens with it. I wouldn't be surprised, right, to see him in a Baltimore Ravens jersey. And I know it's not getting talked about right now, but you think it's Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr., and DeAndre Hopkins in a receiving core. That's how you flip a receiver.
Yeah, and you had Mark Andrews now at tight end, who's not having to carry the mail every single time. I think you're good enough at running back. I want to say this, and the Lions, obviously, everybody's going to be talking about that. What the hell are the Packers doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I'm all for being great up front. But, I mean, at some point, how do you not take a wide receiver or a tight end?
Packers beat the Packers.
With all the wide receivers on the board, all of them on the board still, there hadn't been one taken. There hadn't been a tight end taken. Poor Jordan Love. I don't think Jordan Love's going to be that great of a player. But if I'm Jordan Love watching, if I'm Aaron Rodgers last night, I'm saying thank God. Thank God I'm out of this situation. Because they have been an absolute joke when it comes down to being able to fulfill skill position wants to go win a championship. I'm almost convinced now that the Packers, I know they want to win, but it's almost like there's somebody in there that's like a plant or a mole that like the Lions snuck in there. It's like the Soviet Union, like they did it 30 years before. There's some old man sitting in there just, screwing the whole thing up. I'm not saying Van Ness is a bad player. I think he's a good player. But that's not what the Packers needed right off the rip for me.
I was a little surprised by the Packers as well as the Bucks too, going D tackle there. Again, if the guys end up being great players, and again on the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, great player. Like we're not talking about them not being excellent football players. It's just what team are you going to, and what do those teams need?
Wasn't the best player left on the board and wasn't your most needed player at the time.
Exactly.
So, it's just a question.
And that's the intersection of what we're talking about that with Ted Sundquist, the former
Mm-hmm.
Broncos GM last year when we had him on. Talking about those wide receivers, all of them were still on the board, and then they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Talking about when teams start panicking and they see wideouts going off the board. But the fourth one, Jordan Addison, going to the Vikings. Again, I love that. I love Jordan Addison. Excellent wide receiver, just adds to the arsenal. But where did Minnesota need to get better?
Defense.
On defense. So are they going to address that for the rest of the rounds? And you got Jordan. Again, it could work out for him. It could be good, but
I really like the Miles Murphy pick to the Bengals
okay.
at 28. I always thought, people taking a tackle. If anything up front with the Bengals, that was fine. I thought they were going to go Brian Breesy, but they go another Clemson guy, and that's on the edge of Miles Murphy. They needed another guy, especially in the playoffs. Like, the thing about the Eagles think late into the playoffs of guys they need. What let the Eagles down at the end of the day? Their defense. All right. I know it's hard to stop Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you got enough guys out there you can put on the field to stop Patrick Mahomes. But the depth the Eagles have, and it's the same thing we hit on last year. The guys they rotate in and out on that defensive line is disgusting. And Jordan Davis didn't even play last year.
Yeah. I mean, the Kobe Dean, really, if we're going to be honest. I want to say this about the Bengals. Last night when they made that pick, I'm shocked they didn't take the best available offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. But then this morning, I was driving on the way here with nobody else on the road. I think I was in North Korea or something. And I thought, when you're in that league, that side in the AFC, at some point you have got to get somebody that can get after the quarterback that you're going to face. Think about who you're going to face down the stretch. I mean, we know it's been the Burrow versus Mahomes show. You got to throw bodies at Mahomes. That's how you affect him. So I get it. I think they were a little surprised maybe that Miles Murphy was still on the board at 28 after Will Anderson Jr. and then Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech went so early. I know Mike McDonald's a guy that's a jack to me from Iowa State went. I think maybe they were a little surprised he was on the board, but I get it.
Yeah, and I think that's a situation like we were just talking about where, hey, we wanted an offensive lineman there, but we ended up taking the best available because this guy could be really great for us. Now the rest of the rounds, let's really hone in and maybe take a couple different shots on offensive linemen. The last one I wanted to talk about was the Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid.
Brilliant.
You know, again, another team that needs to get better on the
Brilliant.
defensive side of the ball. But I don't mind this pick. Now you put him opposite Dalton Knox.
Dalton Knox, that's exactly right.
And you know, you just give Josh Allen another weapon in a league now where we've seen the tight end be such an instrumental position.
Yeah, at some point we have to really start looking at the Bills as one of the top 3 most talented offenses everywhere, with a mixture of offensive line, skill position, and quarterback in the whole league. What do the Bills not have? What do they not have? James Cook has worked out at running back. We know they're talented in that room. You add another, not just huge piece in between the 20s, but being able to have Dalton Knox and Kincaid out there at the same time, I mean, that's going to create a lot of matchup problems. It's one thing to have a guy that can cover one of them. Most defenses don't have a guy that can cover both of them when they're on the field. 12 personnel for the Bills, 1 back and 2 tight ends, however you want to call it, is basically like running 11 right now with 2 trees.
Which leaves Michael Mayer out there, a true tight end.
Yep.
You know, Joey Porter Jr. is still out there, right? Or did he get picked up?
I didn't see
Porter
Joey
Jr.
get picked up
as we head into the second round. And then Will Levis fell all the way out of the first round.
You know,
Told y'all.
Well, I mean, been shocked that nobody reached on him. I think people are going to say the reach is the Colts taking Anthony Richardson. I think that's going to be the quarterback
Spider-Man,
reach
Jeff.
that they talked about. But I do want to give credit. All we talked about and all I talked about was who's going to make the mistake for Will Levis. So maybe a lot of y'all that thought Will Levis was this top 4, top 5 pick, the scouts are seeing what we saw for 2 years. When you turn on the tape, it doesn't lie. You got 1 pitch. That's it, and it's the fastball. And you don't survive like that in the NFL. You can't be turnover happy. That's just how it works. Hey, YouTube, appreciate you checking us out. We do a morning show live each weekday from 7:30 to 9 a.m. Eastern. We have live calls. We have a live chat, and we're covering every sport like a warm blanket in the wintertime. And we're also on a race to 100,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, hit it. If you could share it, that'd be great. And turn that notification bell on so you can know when we drop content.